આપણે જોયું કે કૃષ્ણ ભગવાનના હવે રૂકમણીજીની જોડે વિવાહ થઈ ચૂક્યા છે. He has already married Rukmani. So now, and he, along with all the other Yadavs, they are all living in Dwarka. So now we move the story further. There was an honored citizen in Dwarka whose name was Satrajit. He was a great devotee of Suryadev, sun god. As a result of his great devotion, the sun god was very pleased with him and presented him with a gem of matchless brilliancy. It was called Samyantak Mani. This brilliancy became part of whoever wore it, and it produced several hundred kilograms of gold every day. One day, Satrajit's brother, Prasenjit, wore the jewel and went out hunting. In the forest, he was attacked by a lion who killed him and his horse took away the jewel. But the lion in its turn was attacked by the bear chief Jamwan. Jamwanji was the same great devotee of the Lord and in his previous avatar as Bhagwan Sri Ram, who killed him and brought the gem home as a plaything for his little son. Here Satrajit missed his brother and spread a rumor that Krishna had killed him in order to secure the gem for himself. When Krishna heard this accusation, he gathered his men and horses, and in order to prove himself innocent, he set out with them in search of Prasenjit. In the forest they found his remains and also the dead horse and the dead lion. Then, following Jamwan's footprints, they reached his cave in the mountainside. Krishna entered it and grappled with the fierce bear for 28 days. At last, Jamwan realized who it was that he was fighting with. He prostrated himself and begged his forgiveness for not having recognized him earlier. Krishna explained to him that he wanted the jewel only to prove his innocence. Jamwan gladly gave it to him. Krishna now returned to Dwarka and gave the Samyantak money back to Satrajit. Satrajit felt truly sorry for having spread such false rumors about Krishna. He caught his feet and asked to be forgiven. And to show his repentance, he presented Krishna with the gem and his beautiful and talented daughter Satyabhama. Satyabhama became Krishna's wife, but the jewel was returned. "Keep it," said Krishna. "It was a gift to you, but you may give the gold that it produces to the treasury." At this time, news came to Dwarka that the Pandavas had also been killed in a fire as a result of a trap set for them by their wicked cousins, the Kauravas. Krishna and Balram hurried to Hastinapur to find out the truth about matters. So, જ્યારે જામવનજી જોડે લડાઈ થઈ ત્યારે જામવનજીએ કીધું કે આને તો હું નહીં આપવા દઉં તમને, તમારે આને મારી પાસેથી જીતવો પડશે અને એની સાથે સાથે મારી દીકરીનો પણ હાથ તમારે વિવાહમાં તમારે એની જોડે પણ લગ્ન કરવું પડશે. એટલે એવી રીતે કૃષ્ણ ભગવાનના જામવંતી જોડે પણ વિવાહ થયા હતા. પહેલા રૂકમણી, પછી જામવંતી અને પછી સત્યભામા ની સાથે જે સત્રજીત ની પુત્રી હતી. So when the brothers were away, Satrajit was murdered and the gem was taken away from him. Satyabhama rushed to Hastinapur to tell Krishna about it. Krishna and Balram came back after confirming that the Pandavas were still safe and sound and that the Kauravas' plot had failed. They traced the culprit who had committed the ghastly crime and chased him up to Videha. There they killed him, but they did not find the Samyantak on his person. Back in Dwarka, Krishna found the gem in Akrur's possession. He showed it to Satyabhama, which calmed her troubled heart, and then returned it to Akrurji for safekeeping. હવે Mura and Narakasur. Mother Earth was again in trouble. Her people were harassed by a powerful demon called Narakasur. God and men both found themselves under his oppression. So Indra approached Krishna for help. Narak's capital was a well-fortified city and it was surrounded by high walls and mountains on all sides. In addition to this, it was surrounded by rings of fire, wind, and water. It had been designed by the great Asur architect called Moor. The ramparts held self-shooting weapons of all kinds, and Moore had laid traps all over which could not be escaped by even the cleverest enemy. But Krishna overcame all these obstacles. He smashed the ramparts with his mace, and his arrows rendered the weapons useless. With his discus, he destroyed the three rings of fire, wind, and water, and with his sword he slashed the traps. Then he raised his divine Shankh Panchajanya and blew upon it. The sound produced a fearful dread in the hearts of the enemies. Moore was at that point fast asleep deep below in the waters. When he heard the ominous sounds of the Panchajanya, he rose from the depths, a terrible five-headed monster. He blazed with wrath as he flung his dreadful trident at Krishna. Krishna, however, split the weapon with just two shafts. Enraged and boiling with anger, Moore roared with all his five mouths. The whole earth shook, and many felt that the end of the world had come. The Lord sent some more shafts which tore open the monster's five mouths. Then, one by one, all the heads rolled down as the divine discus, Sudarshan Chakra, cleared through them. Moor was now dead. One after the other, Krishna killed the Asur's 7 sons and many other Asur generals who opposed him, and then Narakasur himself was also killed. Victorious, Krishna entered the palace. There he was welcomed by Mother Earth with hymns and prayers. He found 16,000 young maidens who had been kept captive by Narakasur and many other valuable treasures that the Asur had plundered. All these were sent to Dwarka. Krishna took a parijat tree for Satyabhama. Back in Dwarka, he married all the 16,000 fair maidens since they were his great devotees. This was the only way he could protect them since their fathers would not take them back. He built separate palaces for them and multiplied himself so that each one of them felt that he, Lord, was their very, very own. The five-headed monster, Mura, is the ego in each one of us. The 5 heads are the 5 sense organs. The sleeping monster is the ego when it is aroused, plays a death game with the Lord. The Lord, the divinity in us, ruthlessly uses his divine weapon, the discus, the Sudarshan Chakra, the auspicious vision. Darshan means to see, and Su means the good, auspicious. So Sudarshan, to destroy the five-headed Asur in us. When the ego is thus completely annihilated, the Lord makes a triumphant entry into the palace of our hearts. There, in the holiness of the temple with prayers and worship, he becomes enshrined as the supreme king, wedded to all the thoughts in us, the 16,000 captive maidens. And he was the destroyer of the Asura. Moor. Lord Krishna also is known as Murari. Now, Naradji had always been a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. He took great interest in all the Krishna's activities on earth. He came to know that Krishna had killed Narakasur and had married 16,000 maidens that the Asur had held captive. What a marvel, he thought. One Krishna and 16,000 wives? He felt curious to see how Krishna managed to live in peace with all his wives and how he kept them from quarreling with each other. નારદજીને બી બધું અઘરું બધું સૂચતું હોય છે. So he came to Dwarka. Narad could not believe his eyes. When he saw the splendor of Dwarka, he marveled at the beautiful layout of the parks and the ponds. In the tranquil water bloomed lotus flowers and of various hues. There were huge mansions richly decorated, and the roads, marketplaces, and temples were neat and clean. Then he saw the rows and rows of palaces built for Krishna's 16,000 wives. Who can even attempt a description of them? They were the most gorgeous palaces Narad had ever seen. For some time he stood gazing at them in wonder and amazement. Then he made bold to step into one of them. Here the luxury surpassed his wildest imagination. Canopies made of strings of pearls hung from pillars of coral. The seats and furniture were of ivory, and there were luxurious carpets and embroidered curtains. From one of the rooms came the fragrance of incense. Narad entered and saw Krishna resting on a couch. Rukmani was standing nearby and fanning him. Krishna rose to receive the sage. He welcomed him and gave him his own seat. Then he washed Narad's feet and sprinkled the water over his own head as a mark of respect to him. Narad was very pleased indeed, and he left the palace offering thanks to the Lord. Next he went into another palace. There too he found Krishna absorbed in a game with his wife. When he saw Narad, he accorded him a warm welcome. Thus Narad visited every palace, and every time he found Krishna engaged in doing a different thing. In one he was playing with his children, in one he was chatting with a consort, in another one he was preparing for his prayers, but every time he welcomed Narad with great honor and respect, as though he was meeting him for the first time during the day. Narad was indeed delighted with the Lord's game, and in the end he burst into praise. O Lord, your Maya is truly wonderful. Who can ever know it fully? Not even Brahma or Shiva. Today, by your grace, I have seen your wonderful play in the universe. With your consent, I will now go all over the world and spread your divine glory. Krishna said, My son, do not be bewildered. My purpose in life is not only to teach the world how to live, but also by practicing my dharma, to set an example before them. So important. Narad understood the pregnant suggestion of Lord's word. Sri Krishna, as all other avatars, manifested in the world not only to teach by words but to show the world how to live the divine life in the home or in the jungle, in the marketplace or in the fields. He demonstrated how to live a perfect life in this imperfect world of sorrows and problems, joys and pains. Now, one day, Krishna was sitting in his famous assembly hall, Sudharma. A Brahmin messenger came and said that he had been sent by over 20,000 kings who had been made prisoners by Jarasandha. They therefore requested Krishna to come and release them. Just then Narad too came with a message that Yudhishthir, the eldest Pandav, was performing a Rajasuya yajna, and that he would be honored by Krishna's presence at the celebration. Now, Krishna found it difficult to decide which duty to attend to first. He turned to Uddhav and asked him for advice. Uddhav asked all the counselors what should be done. He then told Krishna that it was his duty to protect those who appealed to him for help and also to attend this great sacrifice. But he pointed out, a Rajasuya yajna could not be performed unless all kings had been conquered. As a matter of course, then, Jarasandha would be defeated. As a personal suggestion, he added that Jarasandha should be killed by the Pandav prince Bhim, since he alone had the strength and the stature to equal that of Jarasandha. Jarasandha's daughter was married to Kans, who was widowed by Krishna. Remember that. Let Bhim disguise himself as a Brahmin and ask Jarasandha for a single combat. Malla Yuddha, said Uddhav. He will never refuse a Brahmin anything. This plan was agreed upon and the preparation started immediately. Krishna sent the messenger back to the captive kings with a promise that they would soon be released. Then all arrangements were made for Krishna's visit to Hastinapur. When he arrived at the palace, Krishna was embraced affectionately by Pandavas. Priests recited from the Ved. He was welcomed with flower garlands and music. His consorts were also received affectionately by Mother Kunti and the Pandav's wife Draupadi with gifts and garlands. Then they were led to their apartments where every comfort had been provided for lovingly and every requirement attended to lavishly. One day, Yudhishthir asked Krishna's permission to perform the Rajasuya yajna. Krishna readily granted it. He said, "But Yudhishthir, before you can do so, you have first to subdue all the kings of the earth, and only then you will be fit to perform the sacrifice." Yudhishthir was very pleased that the Lord had given his consent. He sent his four brothers to the four corners of the earth. They vanquished all the kings and brought back immense wealth for the treasury. The only king who remained unconquered was Jarasandha. Yudhishthir was very unhappy at this, but Krishna told him of Uddhav's plan, and Yudhishthir decided that no time should be wasted and that the plan should be put into action at once. And so it happened that three Brahmins, Bhim, Krishna, and Arjun in disguise, set out for Girivraj, the capital of Jarasandha's kingdom. Arriving there, they presented themselves before the king and as poor Brahmins begged his favor. Jarasandha was not only a brave warrior but also a clever and shrewd man. He noticed that their hands bore arrow marks, their bearing was regal, and their voices were confident. Besides, one of them looked very familiar, but he thought to himself, King Bali won fame throughout the three worlds because he granted the request of a Brahmin who was none other than Lord Vishnu himself in disguise. What is the use of pampering this worthless body unless a Kshatriya can win fame in this world? So he turned to the Brahmins and said, "Ask what you will, O Brahmins. I will give you whatever you ask for, even if it be my own head." Then the Brahmins threw off their disguise. Krishna said, "We are not Brahmins, King. These are two of the Pandavas, Bhim and Arjun. I am Krishna. Remember me? We have come here to request you for single combat." Jarasandha laughed and said, "Yes, I remember you. Fools, of course. I will give you fight. But Krishna, I will not fight. He ran away to Dwarka from Mathura. Arjun is much too small for me and not quite so skilled. But yes, I will fight Bhim because he is my equal." He threw a club at Bhim and grabbed one himself. They were indeed equals in fight. For 27 days, all that could be heard was the sound of clubs on human flesh. Each was as brave and as skilled as the other. On the 28th day, Bhim went to Krishna in a dejected mood. He confessed that he did not know how to defeat Jarasandha. Krishna said, "Jarasandha was born in two parts. Jara, his Rakshasi mother, joined him together by her magic." Bhim understood. That day during the fight, he put his foot on one of the Jarasandha's foot. Before Jarasandha could do anything, he pulled him by the other leg and tore him apart. Bhim won the fight. Krishna placed Jarasandha's son, Sahadev, on the throne. He liberated the 20,000 kings who touched his feet and worshipped him. Krishna said, "Riches and power make a man proud. Know you that the body Know that the body is mortal and some day has to die. Therefore, do not attach too much importance to it. Keep your minds fixed on me and rule your kingdoms in peace and happiness." Now, Yudhishthir was fully qualified to perform the great Rajasuya Yajna. He sent out invitations to all the rishis, Vyas, Bharadwaj, Gautam, Vashisht, Yavana, Kanva, Maitreya, Vishwamitra, Parashar, Jaimini, Garga, Kashyap, and others, to his relatives, Uncle Dhritarashtra, his son, the Kauravas, and his wise Vidur, to his teachers, Bhishma, the grandsire, Dronacharya and Kripacharya, to the many gods and all their consorts, as well as the numerous ruling kings of the earth. Elaborate preparations were made for the Rajasuya. At last the day dawned where Yudhishthir was initiated as the sacrificer, Yajman, Mukhya Yajman. The ground for the sacrifice was ploughed with a golden plough according to tradition laid down in the Ved, and the vessels used during the ceremony were also of pure gold. The rites were conducted according to the Vedic law. Then the time came for them to choose as to who out of all those who were assembled was to occupy the seat of honor. Many chieftains, kings, and rishis were present. After much consultation, Sahadev, the youngest of the Pandavas, rose and said, Sri Krishna is the only one who deserves respect more than anybody else. He is the essence in all the sacrifices. He is the sacrificer as well as the sacrificial fire, Ahuti, and the mantras. He is the Atma in all the beings. Therefore, by honoring him, we will be honoring all beings. I suggest that Sri Krishna be shown the highest respect, that he should be worshipped first. All the good, wise, and holy men were very pleased with this suggestion. It was also to the supreme satisfaction of Yudhishthir himself. He rose for his seat and with utensils of worship knelt down at Krishna's feet. With great devotion and reverence, he washed his feet and sprinkled the water over his head. Then he sprinkled it over the head of his wife Draupadi and his brothers, the four Pandavas. His eyes were full of tears of love as he had made offerings of yellow silk and valuable ornaments and gifts. This moment was the climax of the sacrifice. All those who were present felt the sanctity of the occasion. They all stood up and with their palms joined they saluted Krishna. Namo Nama and Jaya Jaya, they cried. One among them was called Shishupal. Shishupal was a hater of Krishna from his past 3 lives. He could not bear all his worship of Krishna, all this. So he started trembling with rage. He shouted in a thundering voice, It is truly said that the time is master of everything. You people who are supposed to be wise and old have listened to the one who is but a mere child. Do you not see before you all these great kings and rishis who have become sinless through their intense tap? Do you not see the great souls before you who have their minds constantly fixed on Brahman? How can you ignore them all and offer the highest worship to this no good Gopal? He is not born of a high caste, nor does his clan possess any tradition or virtue. She went on and on, flinging one abuse and one insult after another at Krishna. Krishna did not react at all to this volley of insults. He uttered not a single word but sat there calm and cool. His devotees and admirers, however, could not bear to hear Shishupal's outburst. Some covered their ears with their hands and ran out of the hall. The Pandavas and their friends drew swords and rushed upon Shishupal, who stood straight and proud and defied them with his shield and sword. Krishna rose and asked them to be calm. And a Vardhan Madelu, 99 insults and I will forgive you. The 100th one, I will not. At the 100th one, his Sudarshan Chakra came flying through the air and sliced off Shishupal's head. Shishupal's friends and supporters fled in terror. But a wonderful thing indeed happened. A column of light shot up from Shishupal's body and entered Krishna. All those present beheld the wonder. Like Kansa, Shishupal had, through the continuous hatred, meditated constantly upon the Lord. The sacrifice then came to an end. Yudhishthir then performed the Avabrita Snan, and all the guests, full of spiritual joy, returned home. Everybody now sang the glory of the Rajasuya Yajna performed by Yudhishthir. Duryodhan was burning now in jealousy. He could not endure the increasing popularity of the Pandav princes. One day, Yudhishthir was sitting in his council hall. It was in the hall of illusions which the demon Maya had built with great skill and craftsmanship. The proud Duryodhan entered the hall along with his brothers. His sword was drawn and he entered. As he entered, he insulted the gatekeepers and others around. Just then he saw before him what looked like water. So he lifted up his garments and walked over it, only to find it was actually smooth floor. Another part of the hall looked like floor, so Duryodhan stepped on it confidently, only to plunge into a pool of water. In his insufferable pride and arrogance, Duryodhan had made a complete fool of himself. When they saw how ridiculous he looked, the ladies of the palace, along with Bhim and others, laughed loud and long. Yudhishthir rebuked them, but Duryodhan was angry beyond measure. He lifted himself from the pond, and without a word he left the hall. His wicked mind bent upon avenging his hurt pride. Yudhishthir was agitated about this, but Krishna said not a word, for slowly he was working out the destruction of the wicked Duryodhan and his evil supporters. So before we get to that, let's come back to Dwarka. Krishna was the king of Dwarka, Dwarkadish. But he had a friend, a poor Brahmin friend, and his name was Sudama. The two were classmates and fellow students in the ashram of Rishi Sandipani. Sudama was very, very poor. He lived on charity. With the result, not only he but his wife too did not have enough to eat. They lived in a small shack and wore tattered clothes. But Sudama had perfect knowledge of the Atman, so he was not frustrated. He led a contented life, and his wife served him with devotion. Day by day, they became thinner and thinner till a time came when the good lady gently reproached her husband and said, Lord Krishna, master of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, is your dear friend. To those who love and worship him sincerely, he gives his very own self. If you approach him, will he not give you a few things to keep you out of this misery of starvation? Sudama heard it, but paid no heed. If every now and then his wife would remind him of the glories of the Lord and would ask him to approach him for help. After many such reminders, these were not just reminders, some of them were quite a bit acidic as well, Sudama decided to go and pay a visit to Krishna. He thought that if nothing else, he would at least enjoy meeting his old friend again. He asked his wife to give him some gift to take to his friend. She begged a handful of rice from the she begged for a handful of rice from the neighbors, prepared beaten rice out of it, and with this bundled in an old torn piece of cloth, Sudama started off on his journey to Dwarka. All along the way he thought of Krishna, Sri Krishna, and felt what a blessing it would be to meet him again. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, sang the great devotee all along his long journey. He passed through the city gates and came before Rukmani's palace. Krishna saw him from afar and ran down the steps to greet him. He was overjoyed to see his old friend. He embraced him lovingly and led him into the palace. There he made him sit down. He washed his tired feet and gave him refreshments, while Rukmani fanned him. All the servants of the palace wondered why the Lord gave such a special treatment to this ragged, old, poor Brahmin. Then Krishna and Sudama talked of their good old days when they were students together with the Rishi Sandipani. They recalled the happy times they had spent together. Then Krishna said, Dear friend, I learned of the hard times you and your good wife have gone through, but he who does his duty with his mind fixed on God knows no grief or misery. Sudama answered that he did not desire anything in the world because he had had the good fortune of living in his heart with the Lord of the universe. Then Krishna teasingly asked him if he had brought him any gift. તું કંઈ લાયો છે મારા માટે મિત્ર? ખબર હતી કે સાવ દરિદ્ર હાલત છે, તોય ભગવાને પૂછ્યું, તું કંઈ લાયો છે મારા માટે મિત્ર? આટલા વખત પછી મને મળવા આવ્યો તો. Krishna was well aware of the small packet of beaten rice that Sudama had brought for him, and also knew that he felt shy to give it to him. જગતના અધિપતિને સામે તમે નાનકડા આટલું પૌવા તમે લઈને ગયા હો ભાત, તો શરમ તો આવે ને. He said, whatever my bhakta gives me with real love, that gift is extremely dear to me. Yet, એનો એક શ્લોક છે, પત્રમ પુષ્પમ ફલમ તોયમ યો મે ભક્ત્યા પ્રયચ્છતિ તદહ્યમ ભત્યુપહત્યમ અશ્નામી પ્રયત્તાત્મા આત્મના. Whoever with devotion offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, that I accept the devout gift of the pure-minded. જે બી લાયા હો, પણ પ્યોર હૃદયથી તમે લાયા હો તો હું એક્સેપ્ટ કરતો હોઉં છું. Whatever my bhakta gives me, bhaktas give me with real love, that gift is extremely dear to me. Despite the Lord saying so, Sudama felt shy. So Krishna searched him and from his upper garment drew out the humble gift. He opened the packet and ate a mouthful of beaten rice. With great appreciation, he said, "This is indeed the tastiest thing that I have ever eaten. And you hid it from me? Truly, it will please the three worlds." And he took another mouthful. Just then, Rukmani saw this and took the packet away. She said, "Lord, two mouthfuls are enough. You have eaten up tamas and rajas of your devotee with only 2 mouthfuls. Do not eat up the sattva with the third." That night, Sudama slept like a king in Krishna's palace. All through, he had been treated as the most honored guest. Next morning, he bade his friend an affectionate farewell. Krishna went with him part of the way, his heart overflowing with love. Sudama proceeded on his journey home. He thought, what if the Lord did not give me any material benefits? So what? If the main purpose of my visit has failed, I am happy in the love of my Lord. He treated me like a god. Perhaps he does not want me to have wealth, lest I should forget him. Thinking so, he reached home. But when he got there, lo, what did he see? He could not recognize his poor little hut, because it was not there anymore. Transformed it was. In the stead of that old hut stood the most magnificent mansion that he had ever seen. There were many gardens and ponds. Servants went about their work. The place was provided with every luxury imaginable. Sudama thought this was a wrong place he had come to, that he had lost his way somewhere. He turned around to go, but a lady dressed in silk and gold came out of the mansion and stopped him. He looked at her and recognized her as his own wife. He knew that this was Krishna's gift to him. Sudama offered praise to the Lord. Thereafter, he and his wife lived a pure life, avoiding excess in spite of their wealth. They meditated upon the Lord constantly and ultimately attained the state of his supreme being. So, that was the story of Sudama and Krishna. Now, Krishna had a sister called Subhadra. She was a lovely young maiden, virtuous and talented. When she reached the marriageable age, Balaram decided to give her hand in marriage to Duryodhan. At this time, Arjun was on his travels. In the course, he reached Prabhas, where he learned about Subhadra's forthcoming marriage. He determined to marry her himself. So he arrived at Dwarka disguised as a Tridandi sannyasi, carrying the triple staff. A particular order of sannyasins belong to the Brahmin caste who even after sannyas carry out the rituals vigorously. Tridandi sannyasi banine avyo, and he lived on food that people gave him. One day Balram came to know that an ascetic of great merit was in the city. So he sent him an invitation for Bhiksha. Arjun went. There he was served by Subhadra. Both Arjun and Subhadra loved each other. It was fortunate that no one in the palace recognized him. Arjun then sought out Krishna and told him of his desire to marry his sister. Krishna heartily approved of the proposal. Balram would never have listened. So Arjun decided to carry her off but had to wait for a suitable opportunity to carry out his plan. One day, Subhadra asked the permission of her parents to go and offer worship at a temple outside the fort. Having secured the permission, she set out in her chariot along with a number of attendants. Arjun was waiting for just such an opportunity. He took everybody by surprise and carried away Subhadra. He drove the chariot to Hastinapur, fighting and defeating anyone who tried to stop him. Balaram was very angry at this behavior of Arjun. It was a difficult task to pacify him, but Krishna succeeded in doing so. In his heart of hearts, he was extremely pleased that his sister had married Arjun and not the vile Duryodhan. Balaram and Krishna then sent a couple many elephants, horses, and chariots as presents, along with many other expensive and valuable gifts. Yudhishthir once asked Krishna a question at the end of the sacrifice. How is it that although Shiva is the supreme yogi ever absorbed in meditation, his followers enjoy great prosperity on earth, and that although Sri Vishnu is the Lord of wealth, Shripati, his followers seem to have absolute dispassion and vairagya for worldly objects and worldly enjoyments? Krishna replied that Shiva is ever connected with Shakti, which is associated with the manifestation of Guna. Therefore, those who worship him will naturally get the material benefits in this world. On the other hand, Vishnu is beyond even the Guna, and to reach him, therefore, his devotees have to rid themselves of the Guna. He said, little by little I take away the wealth of him who I wish to favor. When he is reduced to extreme poverty, he makes new efforts in the material world which get defeated again and again. Ultimately, he seeks the company of my devotees, and it is then that I reveal to him my infinite glory. To explain this point, there is a story which is being told by the ancient masters. There was once an awful demon, Vrikasur by the name. The whole world was miserable with the burden of his vicious acts. One day, Narad approached him and said that if he wanted to acquire more powers, he should do penance and worship Lord Shiva. So Vrikasur betook himself to the Himalayas and performed severe penance. Every day he would cut off a piece of his own flesh and offer it in worship to Lord Shiva. Finally, a day arrived when he decided to cut off his head as a last offering. He was about to do so when Shiva appeared before him and asked him what boon he desired. Vrikasur, with all his viciousness of his asuric nature, asked the Lord to grant him that the person on whose head he placed his hand should be burned to ashes. In short, he wanted a fire touch. Shiva was bound to grant him the boon. No sooner that he said Tathastu, so be it. Then Vrikasur wanted to test the boon by placing his hand on the very head of the Gangadhar himself. At once Shiva realized how dangerous the boon was, but it was too late for regrets. He instantly went to Vaikuntha and begged Sri Vishnu to help him. But Vrikasur followed Shiva to Vaikuntha. Lord Narayan disguised himself as a young brahmachari in the nick of time. He started talking to him. He offered him refreshment and in sweet words asked him the purpose of his visit to Vaikuntha. When Vrikasur told him that he was out to test Shiva's boon, the young brahmachari said, "Do you really believe that Shiva's boon is effective?" "I do not think so. You see, he was once cursed by Daksha. How can his boon have any effect? I think you can quite safely test the boon on your own head." Vrikasur was completely taken in by the brahmachari's sweet words and pleasing manner. And then the Lord's Maya was working on him too. So, trusting the young man's words, he touched his own head with his hand, and boom, in a split second, he lay in a deep heap on the floor as though struck down by lightning. Lord Shiva had thus been saved by Sri Narayan's grace from the tricky situation he had placed himself in due to his readiness in answering prayers. Now, Krishna's mission on earth was nearing its end. He had, in answer to the prayers of the gods and Mother Earth, killed many and any numbers of demons, daityas, and wicked kings. He had played a major part in the great Mahabharat war in which all the Kauravas and their evil supporters had been killed. The Yadav race had grown proud and arrogant because they felt assured of Krishna's guiding hand in all their undertakings. The time was drawing near for the extinction of Yadavs. Besides, Brahma, Shiva, and other gods had requested Lord to return to Vaikuntha. Knowing all this, Uddhavji touched Krishna's feet with his head and said, "Lord, I am well aware that the end of Yadus is near, that very soon you will be leaving the earth. I cannot bear to be away from you. Please grant that I may always be with you and that I may never be separated from you." Krishna then spoke lovingly to Uddhavji and gave him teachings on how to live in the world, how to shake off all attachment to worldly things, and how to cultivate supreme devotion to Bhagavan in order to attain the blessedness of his being. This portion in the Bhagavatam is known as Uddhav Gita. In the course of his teachings, Bhagavan told Uddhav the following meaningful story. King Yadu once came across a young Avadhut. Avadhut means a naked ascetic, lost in thoughts of the Lord. Digambar, jo Bhagwan na vicharo ma hamesha khovail hoy, who seemed to be roaming about aimlessly. Addressing him, he said, "Tell me, O learned one, you look as though you have renounced the ego completely. How do you manage to keep such perfect balance in the midst of men who lust after wealth and enjoyment? What is the secret of your inner peace? What enables you to roam the surfaces of the earth like a child so free from care?" The Avdut answered, "Noble king, I have roamed freely on earth and received wisdom from many teachers. They are 24 in number. Hear from me about them. They are the earth, air, ether, water, fire, moon, sun, the pigeon, python, sea, moth, elephant, bee, honey gatherer, deer, fish, the dancing girl, Pingala, and the osprey, the fishing eagle, the child, the maiden, the arrow maker, snake, spider, and the insect known as Brahmarakita. Listen this to the lesson I learned from each one of these teachers." All the 24 teachers, what do they teach? From the earth I have learned to be tolerant and to do good only for the sake of others. A wise man should never lose his balance even when he is ill-treated by others. He should be like a tree which always serves others, no matter how it is treated by animals and human beings. A man's life should be to this end only. The air, although it carries good and bad odors, is never affected by them. Its essential nature is always pure. Similarly, even though moving in the world of good and bad, a man should not be affected by them. The Atma is like the ether, space, present in living and non living things. It is ever pure, ever free. Meditating upon this Atma should a man live, and even while in his body he realizes his unity with the Lord. As the ether remains untouched by clouds driven by wind, so too should one be untouched by the constant changes in the world. Water is always cool, comforting, sweet, and pure. So too is a sage. Contact with a sage always purifies a person who seeks his company. Sant samagam nivat kariche. Next, Agni. He is like the fire which is not contaminated by good or bad thrown into it. Fire reduces to ash even the filthiest thing that is thrown into it, yet it always remains pure. So too is a man of God who destroys the impurities of others, but himself ever remains pure. The Lord assumes many forms in the universe, just as fire assumes the shape of the burning objects. Just as the flames in the fire rise and fall, so too birth and death are but the movements of the body. With the revolving of time, one sees the changes in the moon, the crescent or the half or the full moon. I, but actually the moon itself remains the same. Similarly, birth and death belong to the body, but the Atma remains the same always under all conditions. The sun, when reflected in many buckets of water, appear as many suns, but is actually one. So too, the Atma, when reflected in many individuals, appears as many, but is actually one. એ અદ્વૈત છે, બીજું કશું જ નથી. દ્વૈત કશું જ નથી, એક જ છે, ખાલી રિફ્લેક્ટ થઈ રહ્યું છે. Now, next is about the pigeon. Once there lived a pigeon in a tree with its mate and its young ones. One day, two pigeons had gone out to look for food. A hunter came and trapped the baby pigeons. When the parents came back and saw what had happened, the mother was so grief-stricken that she too jumped into the trap. The father was unable to bear the separation, so he too jumped into the trap. And thus the entire family was killed. Similarly, a man comes to grief when he is over-attached to his family and possessions. He loses his reason and self-control. Born as a human being, one should strive to reach Brahman. For all our attachments to the world of sense objects drag us down. ભરત રાજાની વાત થઈ હતી ને, હરણ જોડે થઈ ગયું અટેચમેન્ટ, તો આખો નેક્સ્ટ જન્મ હરણ તરીકે જીવવો પડે. A python is content with what food comes its way. So too, a wise man is happy with the food he gets. Whether it is tasty or badly cooked, he does not struggle to keep his body well fed, because his mind is constantly engaged in the contemplation of the Lord. When the ocean is quiet, it is calm and placid. So too is a wise man, ever tranquil in his knowledge. Just as the ocean never overflows its boundaries, so too the man of enlightenment never transgresses his own tranquility. A moth is indifferent to its great danger when it is attracted by the flame. Ultimately, it gets burnt by it. He who does not have sufficient self-control and is easily attracted by the sense objects of pleasure, he, like the moth, ultimately gets destroyed by them due to his overindulgence. Like an elephant is caught in a trap by the touch of the she-elephant, So too a man with lust is caught. Look not at anyone with lustful eyes. The bee gathers honey from all flowers. A wise man learns from all sages and scriptures and sees only the good in them. A deer is attracted by sweet sounds and so is easily caught in a snare. A man should take warning from this and not be drawn by sounds which just sound sweet. A fish, because it is greedy, is caught by the bait on the hook. He who has no control over his sense of taste meets with a similar end. The organ of taste is the most difficult to control. Once it is controlled, it is easy to control all the other organs. Once upon a time, there lived a dancing girl called Pingala. One evening, as usual, she stood at her door, hoping that she would catch some rich man who would reward her with untold wealth for her services. Soon it was nightfall, and yet no one came. Suddenly she realized her folly. She said to herself, "How foolish have I been! I waited for the favors of mere men, when I could have the eternal favor of God. Forgetting the immense wealth of His love, I have sought the wealth of others. The Lord is the friend of all. He has shown me His grace by making me realize this. Truly, I have been foolish, but no more." Pingala soon gave up all her worldly pleasures and composed her mind in meditation upon the Lord. Hope for worldly enjoyments only brings misery. When this hope is renounced, one gains the highest bliss. I am like a child, carefree and happy because I have no attachments. Praise and blame are alike to me. My only playmate is my Lord. The difference is the child is happy through ignorance. The wise man is happy in knowledge which has taken him beyond the guna. Very important. Ignorance inspired vairagya is useful. Maturity, vairagya that has come out of maturity, you grow out of something. That is what needs to be done. I once learned a lesson from a maiden. The Avdut is telling all this. It so happened that a young man and his party came to see her to seek her hand in marriage. Before the food could be prepared, the rice had to be husked, but the girl did not want the party to know that she had to do this task herself. But as she husked the rice, her bracelets made plenty of noise. She felt sure that they would come to know what she was doing. So she removed all her bracelets, leaving two each on each arm. But even these made a tinkling sound. She removed two more bracelets, leaving only one on each arm. From then on, her work was smooth and noiseless. From this maiden, I have learned that there is always a lot of noise and quarreling where many people live together. Even where there are two people, there is a small talk and gossip. Therefore, it is best to be solitary and alone. One should then control the scattered thoughts of the mind and fix it in meditation upon the Lord. The attention should be fixed upon the Lord with as great a concentration as the arrow maker's, who is not conscious of anything else when he is fashioning an arrow. A snake enters and lives in a hole which has been made by others. He is not particular about where it sleeps. A sage seeks out caves. What home can he be attached to? He is silent and modest and only speaks words which are beneficial to others. Just as the spider spins out the thread from its own mouth, weaves it into a web, plays with it, and then withdraws it into itself, so too the Lord brings out the world from himself, plays with it, and then withdraws it into himself. In essence, his nature is ever blissful, unchangeable, and full of knowledge. Sat Chit Ane Anand. The larva, the heat, by constantly thinking of the Brahma, becomes the Brahmara, the Bhamro. Similarly, a man becomes that which he constantly thinks about. All this I have learned from my 24 teachers. and my own body has taught me that it is the most impermanent thing of all. It is the subject to birth and death, as well as decay. Therefore, I have learned that I am not the body, and that, being only the dweller in the body, I am separate from it. Man pampers this body, acquires wealth and enjoyments for its sake, but it finally withers and dies away, leaving everything behind. Of all God's creatures, man alone has the equipments to realize his oneness. Manushya janmani durlabhta chaya. With God, he alone is the rare and privileged incarnation. Therefore, instead of wasting time in pursuit of worldly enjoyment, he must employ his time in seeking God. Truth can be learned from many teachers, for the truth is one, but sages call it by different name. Ekam sadavipra bahudha vadanti. Thus, and in many other words, the Lord taught Uddhavji. He advised him to go to Badri and, shaking off all attachments there, to plunge himself in deep meditation that he may become one with Lord himself. The end of Yadus was near. Krishna saw that they had all taken large draughts of an intoxicating drink. In their drunkenness, they caught hold of any weapon they could lay their hands on and killed each other indiscriminately. Instead of lessening, this fury grew more and more. Soon all the Yadus had killed each other like a fire consumes a forest, leaving not a single one alive. Balram had already gone to the seashore. There he sat, his body locked in yogasana, his mind in deep meditation. Krishna too sat under a peepal tree. He assumed the form of Sri Narayan, four-armed, bright and shining. He placed his left foot on his right thigh and leaned back against the tree trunk. A hunter called Jara mistook the tender foot of the Lord to be the mouth of a deer. He shot an arrow at it. Jara was filled with sorrow when he realized what he had done. He fell at Krishna's feet and begged of him his pardon. Krishna told him, "Do not be afraid, Jara. You have only carried out my own will. You will go to heaven with my blessings." Brahma, Shiva, Parvati, the Prajapatis, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Apsarva, Vidyadhar, and scores of other celestial beings now had all gathered to witness the divine event of Lord's return to Vaikuntha. Krishna's serene gaze dwelt upon them for a while. Then he closed his eyes, meditated upon his own self, and in that very same form he ascended to Vaikuntha. The celestials beat their drums, played their instruments, and blew their shanks, for there was much joy as they sang of Sri Narayan's divine glory. So, this entire story of Lord's play in the world was related by the great sage Shukdev ji. King Parikshit ne kidelu. Remember this? That's how we started. King Parikshit was given this curse, and on the seventh day you will be bitten by the great serpent Takshak. So Parikshit leaves everything behind and says, "Please tell me now what to do." Now, when the story came to a close, so Shukdev ji has told and related this entire story of the glories of the Lord. Came to a close, Parikshit touched the feet of the divine Rishi and with bowed head and folded hands said, "Great has been my fortune in listening to the wonderful stories of the Lord. The time for my end has now come. My mind is free from the fear of the servant and of death. Mrityu no bhay, the fear of death, is gone. Permit me now to fix my mind on the divine glory of Sri Vishnu and thus to give up this body in contemplation of him." જેને બ્રહ્મ વિદ્યા ને આત્મજ્ઞાન મળી ગયું હોય અને મૃત્યુનો શું ભય, એટલે જ્ઞાન થઈ ગયું એટલે કોઈ મૃત્યુનો પછી કોઈ ભય જ નહોતો. Shri Shukdev ji blessed the king and left along with the other rishis and sages who had gathered. Parikshit was now quite alone. He spread the kusha grass evenly and sat on it, motionless, his mind composed in steady meditation. Takshak, the serpent, deputed to kill the king, approached him in the form of a Brahmin. He bit the king viciously, and his deadly venom immediately reduced Parikshit's body to ashes. The great king had given up his body while meditating upon the blissful form of Lord Vishnu. The Gandharvas and the Apsaras and other celestial beings rained flowers on his mortal remains. The three worlds sang the praises of the righteous king and mourned his loss in the world. But Parikshit had forever merged with the Lord and attained his supreme being. There is a shlok over here before I go to the last bit. The essence of the wisdom. These were the last words of Shukdev ji. Aham Brahma Param Dhama Brahmaham Param Padam Evam Samikshanatmanam Atmanam Nyadhyaya Anyadhyaya Nishkale Dashantam Takshakam Pade Lalihanam Vishanan Nadrashyasi Shariram Cha Vishvam Cha Pruthagatmana. Let me translate it in English. I am Brahman, the supreme resort. Brahman am I, the supreme state. Thus recognize yourself in your own self. Then you shall not see either your body or this world or the terrible Takshak who is coming near you with his tongue to bite you. आज आत्मज्ञान છે, आज ब्रह्म છે, आज सार છે ભાગવતનો. This is the essence. Recognize yourself, પોતાને જાણો, know yourself, who you are, what you are not, and what are you in perpetuity. And then you will stop identifying with the body, with this world, and move away. So, the last bit now, which is the vision of Markandeya Rishi. There once lived a great Rishi called Markandeya. He was initiated into Brahmacharya ashram by his father. He was an ascetic of supreme merit. He lived a strict life of penance and performed most rigorous tap. He wore his head matted and dressed in the bark of the trees. He spent many long years in meditation. Seeing the steadiness of his contemplation, Indra became nervous. He sent the most beautiful and accomplished Apsaras to distract the sage's attention. They sang and danced before him, but not once did Markandeya's mind waver. Sri Narayan was extremely pleased with the intensity of his tap. He appeared before him and said, I am greatly pleased with your devotion to me. Ask for any boon that you will. Markandeya worshipped the Lord and said, Lord, I wish to be shown the play of your divine Maya in the universe, which tricks men into seeing different forms and beings where actually only you exist. The Lord blessed Markandeya and returned. One evening it so happened that Rishi Markandeya was engaged in worship on the banks of the Pushpabhadra river. Suddenly a gust of wind came up, and within moments it turned into a raging storm. There were flashes of lightning, and the rivers rose in angry flood. Soon there was water everywhere. All life on earth was wiped out. The rising sheets of water even drowned the sky and the stars. Only Markandeya Rishi found himself borne aloft by the waters of the flood, along with some of the fierce animals belonging to the ocean. He was in utter despair. He was cold and hungry, and there was darkness all around. At other moments, he found himself in joyous ecstasy and knew not what to make of the strange experiences. As the flood continued to toss him up and down, he saw that on one patch of the ocean a small patch of light was there. Then he saw a small island lift up. On the island was a vata tree, a banyan tree, vata vruksha. On one of the leaves of the tree, he saw a divine baby resting joyfully. It had a dark complexion and was the source of light that Markandeya Rishi saw. The baby had a beautiful face, fresh and glowing. The sides of the leaf had turned up like a basket. The divine baby smiled at Markandeya Rishi and lifting his foot began to suck his big toe. Holding his feet with his hands, the toe inserted in his mouth, lying in a cradle of banyan leaf. This purely child divine, I meditate upon you. Oh, sorry. Had that big toe in his mouth. Markandeya Rishi was so thrilled beyond measure on beholding this unique vision. He stepped closer to the baby and was surprised to find himself being sucked in by the baby's breath. There inside, he was amazed to find not only himself but also his ashram and the river Pushpabhadra. Next moment, he was exhaled by the child and he found himself again out on the flood. The child smiled at him happily. Markandeya Rishi made to hold the entire child in his arms and embrace it, but suddenly it disappeared, and with it disappeared the entire flood, and the little island and the banyan tree. Markandeya Rishi was once again standing in front of his ashram on the banks of Pushpabhadra offering worship to the Lord. The several million years of the Pralaya passed as a few minutes in this vision of Markandeya Rishi. In response to his prayer, the Lord made him a witness of his divine Maya and had himself appear to him as a lovely baby on the angry flood waters of the great deluge. Time itself is our imagination only. Kararavinde napadarvindam mukharavinde navini Vatasya patrasya pute shayanam bala mukundam manasa smarami. So, this was the prayer. And time itself is our imagination only. Mahapralaya jova maliyu, Maya jova maliyu. When Krishna departed from his earth, with him departed truth, piety, righteousness, fortitude, and all glory. The age of Kali began. Even so, the very utterance of the Lord's holy name is purifying and elevating. Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Constant meditation upon his lotus feet, Pada Pankaj, drives away all sorrows and evils. It purifies the heart. It increases love for him who is the Lord of love and life. It brings to the devotee supreme wisdom. Blessed indeed are those who have him ever enshrined in the sacred temples of their heart. Let us then constantly remember the divine flute bearer, the Murlidhar of Vrindavan, and dedicate all our actions to him. Gain spiritual enlightenment and at-one-ment. Enlightenment and at-one-ment with him. Yada tatha yatha tatha tathaiva Krishna sat katha maya sadaiva giyatam tatha krupa vidhiyatam. Wherever I am, in whichever state, bless my Lord, that I may always sing the praise of thy sacred stories. Tat katha. Yada tatha yatha tatha tathaiva Krishna sat katha maya sadaiva giyatam tatha krupa vidhiyatam. And then in the end it says Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste and Namaskar. With this, Bhagavatam, the stories of the Lord Vishnu, come to an end. Pranam and Namaskar.